I'm gonna this just so it's easier for me to take the minutes afterwards. So I guess I'll start with, should we just go through introductions? What do you think, Stephanie?
Yeah, that sounds great. Morgan, if you could get a listing of everybody that's participating and send it to me, that'd be great, if that's possible.
Yep, we have a sign-in sheet going around now. Okay, so I'm Morgan Wilbur, County Administrator, and Jill Dennis,
And
Emergency Management Director.
I'm Bill Kearns, I'm the Deputy Emergency Manager.
Kathy Siano Goodwin, select board member here, Grafton.
Buzz Fisher, I'm on the planning commission for Grafton.
Just introduce yourself.
I'm Kim Rucker, Town Clerk Treasurer of Grafton.
Go ahead.
Amber Stevens, I'm the ENC for Grafton.
Eric Stevens, another deputy EMD.
David Hall, resident of Grafton, Vermont.
Mary Howard Fader, a school board member, church food pantry runner.
I'm Peggy Sandhouse, I'm just a lowly citizen. Hacienda's resident.
Great, thank you all. So Stephanie, how would you like this to be run? Do you want me to go through the agenda?
I'd be happy to go through unless you'd like to, because it's okay.
You can take it.
Sure. Well, it's a pleasure to meet everybody, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone over the next few months to update Grafton's local hazard mitigation plan. So the next item on the agenda is setting a meeting schedule and whether or not the folks on the committee want to do on site, virtually, or a hybrid version like this.
Hybrid seems to work well. Yeah, I think that is probably the easiest for most folks.
And does this, so this is Thursday, it is the second Thursday of the month. Does that work for everybody?
That works for me. Does you have a preference?
I have school board.
Okay, does another day in the week work better?
What
Yeah.
time?
Do you have a time preference?
Are you
Stephanie?
asking me, Morgan?
Yeah.
Just throw out some times and I can let you know. So like Monday evenings, 2nd and 4th of Mondays, I have other meetings. So Wednesdays at 10, the third Wednesday at 10 is not good. And then the third Thursday at 6, I'm not available. But my schedule's pretty open.
The only, the Thursday I, select board is at 6 o'clock, so. They have it during the day, it's fine. If I have a meeting, I have to go.
So could we do consistently Thursdays early afternoon?
Yeah.
Yeah, this Thursdays at 1 o'clock every third Thursday. So. Work.
And I was there every second.
So third Thursday at 1 o'clock, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
That's good. So FEMA last year came out with some new requirements with the local hazard mitigation plans, and that's getting public outreach and input as much as possible to make sure that various parts of the community are involved in this process, whether it be businesses or nonprofits. But also looking at the vulnerable populations, and sometimes that is the first responders have that input available, but making sure that as much of the community is included in this process as possible. So one of the first things on the agenda for the public outreach is getting an announcement out of the update and asking for any kind of feedback. And I listed a couple different ways that towns typically get this information out. They usually put it on their website, make it available at the town clerk's office, library, local store that a lot of people frequent. Sometimes stores have those public bulletin boards, social media. I'm not sure if the town of Grafton participates in the VT Alert program, that they can send out text messages and emails and whatnot. That's also a way to get information out.
Okay, yeah, we participate, we can do all of those that you just mentioned.
And we have a local newspaper once a week.
Oh, yeah.
So if you'd like, I can send a draft template of some language that towns typically use if you'd like, unless you want to come up with your own.
I would use your template, if that's possible.
Sure. Send that out. So then stepping down into the outline of activities of updating the plan. I'm not sure how familiar folks in the room are with what a local hazard mitigation plan is, and if like an overview of that first, or if you'd like me to kind of dive in to what kind of activities we're going to be working on over the next couple months.
Activities, right?
Everybody familiar with
So
local
we're
hazard
gonna do
plans?
Let's talk about the activities that we need to do in the next few months.
Everybody's familiar with what the plan's all about. Yeah, cool. That works for me. So yeah, I provided it in the agenda, the kickoff meeting agenda. I think everybody's got a copy of that. So yeah, we work on the first section, which is looking at the intro and purpose from the last plan to see if there's any updates that need to be made or if we want to revamp it. And then looking at the community profile, some of the pieces that I like to include, or I think are beneficial for the communities to include, is water, wastewater elements, transportation, electric distribution. Who is your main provider of power in your area? Is that Green Mountain Power?
Yes.
So what I usually do is I put an email out to Green Mountain Power and ask that they provide the last 5 years of outages. I think that's helpful to have to see how that impacts the community over time. And then getting some updates on public safety, what the fire department looks like, police and EMS programs look like. And then obviously any emergency management elements that you'd like to include. And then the next step is to look at the community as a whole and identify critical facilities that the community thinks should be protected during an event, and seeing how. So what I usually do is I put together a map of the town. I overlay it with the E911 data, and then I pull out elements that the town feels are critical facilities, things like the fire station or the town clerk's office, government buildings, things like that, shelters. And then I usually overlay that with any floodplain data that's available. So we'll have that as an element. And then we start looking at the hazards. We look at the state's plan and utilize the hazard list that they have there. And we look at the history of those hazards and how they've affected the community. And then I have this little handy spreadsheet that I put together that helps the community grade these hazards. For instance, the probability of it occurring, and then if it does occur, how does it affect the community? The infrastructure impact, the life impact, the environmental impact. And then those scores are graded, and typically communities choose the top 4 or 5 to focus on. So you don't have to look at every single hazard. For instance, earthquakes is a hazard that's identified in the state plan, but it may not necessarily impact the community. So if it scores low, you don't have to look at how the community is going to mitigate for an earthquake over the next 5 years. Another element that is part of the new requirements is global warming, the impacts on the hazards and how that affects the community. And stepping down to identifying capabilities and vulnerabilities. That can be in the public safety realm, looking at the plans that the community currently has and how they integrate with one another. For instance, the town plan looks at the hazard mitigation plan in the long range, and vice versa. Things that the community would like to think about that leaves them a little bit vulnerable. You've had an impact, and how you'd like to improve that vulnerability for the next event. I also already talked about the plan integration. So we look at the town plan, the zoning plan. Not sure if it's exactly, Morgan, you sent me. It's a flood damage prevention regulation. So does the town have zoning regulations? Yeah, I see subdivision regulations.
We have subdivision and flood.
Okay.
That's it. We don't have zoning regulations.
So we look at these policies and regulations and the plans and see how how all of them kind of integrate with one another, and maybe look at ways of improving that integration as an action for the next 5 years. So then we start looking at identifying hazard mitigation for the next 5 years. And typically what I do with the communities is looking back at the last plan and what actions were identified in that plan, and see what's been accomplished, what needs to go in this current plan that we're updating, and then looking at the current goals and seeing if that's meeting the expectations of your community. And then one element I haven't asked you for yet, Morgan, is looking at the review tool, the plan review tool that FEMA provides when they're reviewing these plans. So looking at the last plan's reviews and looking at what good things are in this plan, and then also looking at some recommendations that the community might want to consider incorporating into this new plan. And then from that, we incorporate anything from the old plan, and then we start looking at identifying, prioritizing actions that the community wants to take on in the next 5 years. Things like continuing with the municipal roads and grants program, upgrading culverts and stormwater discharge improvements, things like that.
Okay, Stephanie, with regard to that, Stephanie, are you gonna comment on what we said in the old plan that we were looking forward to, what we did prioritize in the old plan and where we were successful in actually performing that during those 5 years? Because there's several things that we prioritized, culverts and roads and the many culverts that we were wanted to upgrade, and we did that, and I think that it might be good to recognize where we did meet those goals and where we did not meet the goals.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what I typically do is I take that table, I think it's usually a table, move it in, and then we kind of, we go through it and identify what was accomplished. And sometimes there's some actions that didn't get accomplished that aren't relevant anymore, or yeah, sometimes, yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So there, and we just make that comment that the town chose that this is not a priority anymore and is disregarding that prior action because of that.
Thank you.
And then the last thing is identifying how the plan will be maintained over the next 5 years. Things like, you know, after an event, does the plan get revisited, and are there revisions or adaptations made to it because of that? So that's it in kind of a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions? That's a lot of information to take in 15 minutes. I hope I didn't speak too fast.
No, it follows the outline pretty much of what we do have. Because we followed the same outline last time, as far as it's my recollection of it is it's all there, so.
Yeah, so yeah, I took a quick look at the past plan. It looks great, especially the public outreach that you incorporated into the last plan. I think that's great because that is crucial now with the new plans, is making sure that there is enough outreach so that FEMA is satisfied that the community was involved in this process, that it didn't happen in a vacuum.
Would it be correct to say that this document is basically a compliance or a dance with FEMA to address those kinds of hazard mitigation that FEMA would ultimately be responsible for supporting or providing funds for?
So if I understood the question correctly, so FEMA is not ultimately responsible. The town is responsible for mitigating these actions. What this plan helps to provide is if there are mitigation funds that become available, you actually have a plan, which is crucial to getting FEMA funding. But it also helps show that these actions are in process and what I want to say. It helps the community kind of prioritize these actions ultimately, and it helps justify in other cases for other funding availability that's not necessarily FEMA. For instance, Federal DOT had a grant last year that they put out. It was called the Protect Grant. And basically you had to do a BCA, benefit cost analysis, and having projects identified in this plan helps justify getting other funding sources. I hope I answered your question.
I think you answered the question. My question was brought about by wondering whether we should or could expand the scope of the plan beyond that which FEMA would, say yes or no as far as accepting the plan. I'm concerned about our covering some things that are, have not been traditionally covered in the plan, but are of great community interest when we do have an emergency. Aside from what, may be destroyed and FEMA would be, expected to help with recovery.
So having a hard time hearing. So are you saying that the community might do certain actions, and if something were to get damaged, FEMA may not reimburse for it? Is that what you're saying?
I'm thinking about actions that the community can take to, more completely, help our citizens beyond just what FEMA would be reimbursing for, like infrastructure.
Oh,
because,
absolutely, absolutely.
And I wondered whether this is a place where that logically could reside, and still meet FEMA requirements.
Yeah,
Can you give an example of what you're thinking?
I think I can. So maybe a bridge might be a good example. So if there's a bridge that is on a federal aid road, and you want to put it into this plan, because FEMA wouldn't be paying for that, wouldn't be able to fund that, because federal highway would fund that program. And so yeah, so even though that this is a FEMA document, you want to think about other funding sources on top of that help make the town more resilient. Is that a good example?
I'm thinking more about things that, impact people during an emergency that are not necessarily infrastructure that FEMA reimburses.
Like what? Name.
I was
Social and
getting there.
Okay.
Organizing volunteers, doing communications outreach, providing for, basically psychological, support, things that otherwise don't meet FEMA reimbursement, but should be planned for within the government structure so that people are more comfortable. And I was wondering if this is a logical place to have that kind of planning done.
Yes, to answer your question, yes. So one of the sections in here is talking about it's not an actionable, I want to say actionable is not the word, but yes, doing educational outreach to the community on how to prepare for. So if there was an event that was happening that was a planned event, that a tropical system was coming through, having that outreach and making the community aware of, making sure you have food and water for 3 days. Having that kind of educational outreach is important and part of that should be part of a plan, this kind of plan.
And it is reimbursable.
Good.
Yeah.
One of the agenda items got jumped over as to whether we were going to work with Teams or Zoom, and I'm lobbying for Zoom. Teams screwed up my computer.
Thank you for picking up on that. Yeah, so I run Teams, but it's interesting. I have a lot of trouble working with municipalities, working with Teams. It worked a lot better when I was on Google. So yeah, we usually, if that's okay, Morgan, we will definitely use the Zoom account.
Yeah, absolutely, that's fine.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Comments?
Are we gonna make some assignments of, duties to carry forth on this?
Sure, so what I can do, so at the end, we are going to meet. What I can do is I can work with Morgan. And I can send out the first 3 sections of the plan that we want to work on, which is the introduction, the purpose, and then the community profile. So get updates to that information. And I can, as far as like the public safety pieces, I can send it directly to the fire chief and whoever is a good point of contact for that. And then we can review that next month also. And then we can also start identifying the critical facilities. Start having that discussion.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. So you're going to email me the 3 sections that we should be reviewing before the next meeting.
That's correct. Yeah, I'll send that out in the next couple days.
Okay.
So I have here July 18th.
Just look at the calendar really quick. Yep, July 18th at 1 o'clock. Okay. Perfect. Okay, great.
Great.
Anything? Okay, well, I think this has been helpful for me just to listen in and know what, we're all gonna be covering. So yeah, thank you all for coming. This has been helpful and we hope you can come to the next one, of course. But yeah, so I'll be in touch, after I get those sections and then we can just go from there.
That sounds great. Well,
Stephanie, just as a part of, how we handle the volunteers who are working, we have, we sent around that list, but I noticed that the Bonans are on, and there's 2 of them, Charlie and his wife, and Dottie Cannon is on. We will add their names to this list that we passed around. Is that okay for this period?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
We have the sign up list that we passed around here, but we have 3 people that are on the computer, they're on Zoom. Can we simply add their names to that list?
Absolutely. Yep. That'd be perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask Stephanie, so working on the, outline that everything, the chapters you're sending to Morgan, is that counted as keeping track of time also?
Yes.
Outside of the meeting, okay.
Yes. So Morgan, are you gonna track that or would you like me to?
I know that, I don't remember the person's name, but. Somebody, we have the grant agreement that we got it executed from. They sent me an Excel sheet to track it. So I'm happy to just update that as we go.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, great. So we'll see everyone back on the 18th.
Sounds good. Nice to meet everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.